I say to you that the challenges we face are real. They are serious and they are many.
The temperature is expected to keep going up.
The stock market plunged.
Douglas County will run out of drinking water.
They will not be met easily or in a short span of time.
A sixth grader came down with suspected swine flu on Wednesday.
Energy, climate, food, population, economic pressures. Any one of these challenges might be very serious in itself. But because they're happening all simultaneously, it's going to be very difficult for our governments to cope.
When I look at the next century, I feel it's up for grabs.
Raising sea level.
Catastrophic weather.
10-year drought.
It's scary.
These are things that are happening today.
The time for action is now.
Their everyday lives, as if nothing had changed.
And until we have a crisis of some kind, I don't think we're going to be motivated to wake up and say, okay, now we have to change.
Sometimes it takes a big shock to get people, out of the inertia that's built into the system.
How can then the total population grow like this if the children doesn't increase? Where will all these adults come from? And to explain that, I have to leave this fancy digital stuff and show you real powerful educational material we have developed. And it's here. I will show you the world population, ladies and gentlemen, in the form of foam blocks. 1 block is 1 billion. 1 block is 1 billion. And that means that we have 2 billion children in the world. Then we have 2 billion between 15 and 30 years of age. These are rounded numbers. We have 1 billion 30 to 45. We have 1 billion 45 to 60. And then we have my block, 60 years and older. We are here on top. This is the world population today. And you can see that there are 3 billions missing, like here. Only few of them are missing because they have died. Most of them are missing because they were never born. Because back then, before 1980, there were much fewer children born in the world because there were fewer women giving birth to children. So this is what we have today. Now, what will happen in the future? Do you know what happens to old people like me? They die. Yes. There was someone here who works in hospitals. Yeah? So they die. The rest, they grow 15 years older and have 2 billion children. These ones are now old, time to die. And then these ones grow 15 years older and they have 2 billion children. This one die and the rest grow 15 years older and have 2 billion children. And without increasing the number of children, without increasing the length of life, we have 3 billion people more by this big inevitable fill-up of adults, which will happen just when the large young generations grow up. Now, there's one more detail, which is good news for the older ones here, like me, that it's estimated that the old people will live a little longer. So we have to add 1 billion more for the old here on the top.
Overpopulation is a problem because of the other problems it creates. With more people being born, it leads to more people leaving a carbon footprint, which means the process of global warming and climate change happen faster. It also creates problems with growing food shortages and water shortages. As more and more people are born, our continued growth has led to many other species going extinct because we have encroached on their habitats and used their habitats for resources we need. Some of these animals we are causing to go extinct help keep our ecosystem in balance, and without them, we will see a drastic change in our ecosystem. If none of these problems existed, then our population could continue to grow with no limit other than the boundary of land available on Earth. Stopping the growth of the human population would not solve the existing problems already mentioned. So instead of creating a temporary solution of reducing human population, we could work to solve the aforementioned problems. However, because of the last problem, human population growth must be stopped at some point so that other animals can live on this planet as well. So the main problem at hand is stopping the problems that we have been creating by overpopulation, and if we don't, there will not be a future for humans on this planet.
Overpopulation directly correlates to climate change, particularly as larger nations like China and India continue to develop their industrial capacities. They now rank as 2 of the 3 largest contributors to emissions in the world, alongside the United States. 97% of the scientific community agrees that human activities are changing global temperatures. Larger populations may speed these changes up, especially if more is not done to reduce individual carbon footprints on a wide scale.
We're spewing more carbon, more methane, more nitrous oxide into the atmosphere. All the bad things of climate change are coming true.
According to the Water Project, water shortage affects every continent and around 2.8 billion people around the globe at least 1 month out of every year. More than 1.2 billion people lack access to clean drinking water, and with the growing population, more people will be born into areas with water shortage.
By 2030, 2/3 of the world's population will be under water stress.
In Asia, for example, glaciers on the Tibetan Plateau act as a giant reservoir for billions of people.
All over the world, as the climate warms, mountain glaciers are melting at faster and faster rate.
By 2030, 80% of those glaciers may be gone. If the glaciers disappear, much of the food supply will disappear as well.
These glaciers provide stream flow in the summer during the dry months that you can use to irrigate your crops. When those glaciers are gone, you've got a massive drought situation.
Our current global population is 7.2 billion and growing. Earth's total resources are only good for 2 billion people at the current demand. Let's do the math, and it's obvious that the result is negative. The way that we're living, we're already using 2 to 3 times more of the Earth's natural resources than what is sustainable. If we do not act now, we will see the consequences of depletion of natural resources. And it's not going to be pretty. A desolate, dry Earth is not a fun place to live.
Some 250,000 Bangladeshi refugees fleeing from last month's devastating cyclone are massing on the Indian border.
Thousands riot as China faces its worst wheat shortages in a decade, the result of seemingly endless drought.
Diseases spread more quickly among people who live in close proximity to each other. Currently, over 50% of the global population lives in urban areas. With more people living in dense conditions, there's more frequent contact between more individuals, allowing disease transmission to easily occur. As it becomes more common for people to travel throughout the world, it also becomes easier for diseases to travel with them. An outbreak in one region that would have otherwise been contained can move into other uninfected regions, which, when infected people travel, relocate to these areas. Environmental challenges, such as changing climate, can lead to the spreading of diseases, especially those that are vector-borne or carried by a host. For example, the West Nile virus is spread by mosquitoes, the vector. As the climate changes, the disease-carrying mosquitoes are able to move into regions where they previously could not survive, thus affecting new areas. Additionally, as global temperatures increase, so do the conditions under which many of these carriers flourish.
In New York, it'll be a magnet, as any viable city will be a magnet. These cities, where people come to flee, become petri dishes for diseases and new diseases and resistant forms of disease.
There are a number of infectious diseases that are currently confined to tropical and subtropical areas that are likely to spread into temperate zones. And this is something that I'm very concerned about.
The UN projects the population of the 48 poorest countries in the world will double from 850 million in 2010 to 1.7 billion in 2050. Poverty and the lack of access to education leads to higher birth rates and overpopulation.
I'm going to show you this yardstick. Very simple, poor and rich. And here I have all the 7 billions again. They are in a very simplified way lined up there from the poorest to the richest. Now, how much does the richest billion earn here in dollar per day? Well, let's look here. Ooh, it's coming up, it's coming up. Ooh, I can't even reach $100 a day. Then let's look at the middle billion, who is exactly in the middle. How much do they earn? It'll come, yes, just 10. And then I go over here to the poorest billion. How much do they get? Well, just 1. This is the difference of the world today. And the economists, they draw a line which they call the line for extreme poverty, a little above $1. That's when you hardly can have enough food to feed the family. You cannot be sure that you have food all days, you know. And 1 billion is clearly below that still. And the second billion is sort of divided by that line. And then the others are above it.
The world's population has reached a point where limiting the number of children will not have a major effect. As Hans Rosling said, the world's population has reached a state of peak child, where the number of children being born has stopped increasing and reached a constant number of about 2 billion children alive in the world. So instead of trying to limit population growth by limiting childbirths, a better method of dealing with overpopulation would be to convert clean energy, urbanize impoverished countries, and decreasing the issue of water shortages. While reducing the effects of global warming helps with increasing the amount of water available, with the inevitable growth of the human population to around 11 billion, we will need more water than what is available now. To do this, water pollution must be reduced, which can be fixed through stricter regulations. Also, converting seawater to drinking water by creating desalination plants in coastal cities.
Converting to clean energy would reduce the amount of carbon released into the air, which would help to stop global warming and its effects. To do this, all that would need to be done would be replacing oil and coal power with renewable energy sources such as solar or wind power.
Urbanizing impoverished countries would help reduce the number of children people in poverty would need to have. To do this, medical care there would need to be improved so that mothers would have less children, since she's less worried about having her children die. Also, a better transportation infrastructure would need to be set up to rapidly increase the rate of urbanization. This would help improve their economy, which would mean less child labor would be needed, and these children can now get an education instead of working. Another thing is that this helps reducing food shortages in these countries.
Today in 2009, the idea that we could do so much damage to our natural environment that it could cause our global civilization to collapse may seem far-fetched.
Think of all the signs of normalcy. Water is still coming out of the faucet in my kitchen. The electricity still turns on. I buy food at the supermarket. It seems inconceivable that our modern world could collapse.
Every society that collapsed thought it couldn't happen to them. The Roman Empire thought it couldn't happen. The Maya civilization thought it couldn't happen. The Byzantine Empire thought it couldn't happen. But it did. And it usually creeps up on you unforeseen.
At its peak, the Maya civilization numbered more than 10 million.
They had astronomy. They had the only writing in the New World. They had great art.
They were the biggest game in town. They are the equivalent of us in their era.
These city centers were supporting 25 to 50,000 people. So they were very well adapted to their surroundings, and they were able to grow.
But they grew too much and exhausted their resources.
Growing population, meaning growing demands on the land, deforestation and soil erosion, which tied into warfare. There was chronic warfare among the Maya city-states.
And then their climate suddenly changed.
There were these series of extended droughts, and those droughts just kept hammering away and hammering away. You lose your forests, you lose your soils. If you lose your soils, you can't grow anything. And if it stops raining, then forget about it.
The end game for the Maya must have been horrible indeed. It's highly likely that there were also periods of starvation. It's a truly hideous and ugly way to die.
You might be sitting in your chair wondering, what can I do to help? Here we are to tell you.
To start, you can convert your house to clean energy. Also, you could donate to the H2O project to provide clean water for those in Africa.
Furthermore, you can donate to family planning organizations in third world countries so that these families do not have more children than they can support. Also, continue to support organizations such as Doctors Without Borders to improve medical care worldwide. Thank you.